Hello and welcome to the second session on the topic of changing cities. Before we go into it though, I'm just going to do a quick summary of the last session which covered urbanisation in general. So just to give you kind of 5 key bullet points of what you should have picked up from the last session. One is the main causes of urbanisation. So urbanisation, remember, is the increase in number of people living in towns and cities. So a greater proportion of those people living in towns and cities rather than in the countryside. So the main cause, the two main causes are that people are moving from rural or countryside areas to towns and cities, and also natural increase, so more people being born, birth rate being above death rate. So those are the two main causes of urbanisation in anywhere in the world. Rural to urban migration itself, so the movement of people from the countryside into towns and cities, is largely caused by better job availability and more secure work, or what we'd call pull factors. There are many other pull factors which cause rural to urban migration, but that's just one of them. The fastest urbanisation, so the most rapid rate, the quickest that cities are growing, is occurring in the developing or emerging world. So countries such as Mexico itself and Brazil and China, for example, are where urbanisation is happening the fastest, and the biggest proportion of people are kind of shifting there. Overall, however, the developed world still is the most urbanized place in the world. You know, it's already done its urbanization because of the Industrial Revolution back in the sort of late 1800s, early 1900s. There are advantages and disadvantages to the rapid increase in numbers of people living in towns and cities. So rapid urbanisation does create good things, but largely the things we're going to focus on throughout this topic are the negatives. So there you go, there's a bit of a summary and a bit of a key term summary as well about to come up through some dingbats. So just put your dingbat hats on. Remember, dingbats are you say what you see. And if you don't know the people that are in some of the photos, then you might not be able to do this. So this one, just to demonstrate, is a lion roaring and a person roaring, and this is Al Murray, the pub landlord. So this is raw Al, and so this would be rural. Okay, so I'll do the next one and see if you can get this one. Tricky one, this one. Those are herbs, and they are Ray-Bans minus Ray Charles. Okay, so Ray-Ban minus the Ray is just ban. So herb, ban, urban. Yeah, that one's a bit of a tricky one. Sorry about that. Next one. Okay, this one, hopefully you got, was urbanisation. Okay, I'll explain it. Herb, ban, eyes, hay, shin. That's a good one. Next one. Mr. Lockley put this one in there. Thank you, Mr. Lockley. Okay, this one is migration. Okay, so these are, this is a sort of a scale with some notes, okay, minus the notes themselves. And then grey, and then shin. Lots and lots of bits to this one. To help you, this is Al Pacino, and this is Jack D. Okay, rural depopulation. Raw, Al, D, pop, Ule, shin. Terrible, isn't it? Next one. World city. City. This one. Classic books on the left there. Who's that lady? Okay, this one is mega city. And this one. They're getting worse, aren't they? This one is millionaire city. Okay, enough of those dingbats. Let's start doing the lesson. Okay, so we're going to now focus on urbanisation in the United Kingdom. And what you can see here is the United Kingdom. It doesn't look like this in the real world because normally Northern Ireland is not detached from the Republic of Ireland, but we're just focusing on the UK, and the Republic of Ireland is not in the UK. So what I'd like you to think about doing, you don't have to do this physically by drawing on your screen, is just put little spots where you think the most populated UK locations are. For example, let's get the easy one out of the way. Down here this is London. So this would be one of the most populated parts of the UK. In fact, certainly the most. Around 10 to 12 million people live in London currently, which is roughly sort of a fifth, maybe a sixth of the UK's entire population. So that's one place. Once you've marked on where you think, try and consider maybe why you think they might be located there. So to give you a bit of a clue, the most up-to-date figures I've got currently are that the UK's population is 66.65 million people. Try and work out where those 66.65 million people are found. Okay, so pause the screen, plot as many as you can, and then I'm going to reveal a picture to show you a good idea in a second. Okay, so this is a map which has kind of divided it up. Now we can see where I pointed out where London was. You can see that there is sort of more darker colours, and you've got these little specks of dark colours which tend to represent cities, because this is actually about population density. This map shows you the number of people per square kilometre. So in London, the darker the colour, the more people per square kilometre. So between 9,600 and 14,500 for this dark purple here. So that means densely populated, lots of people squeezed into a certain area. Norwich, you can see, as a small city, it's got quite a few people. You can see it's pointing out there. But you've got these other hotspots here. So you've got Cardiff here, Bristol down here. You've got Birmingham here, Liverpool and Manchester here. You've got sort of Sheffield, Leeds here. You've also got Newcastle up here. You've got Glasgow, Edinburgh, and Belfast. Essentially, major cities are where you're going to be finding your biggest population centres, and that's why we call them major cities. They are large population centres. So what I'd like you to do, rather than have to describe the distribution by yourself, okay, which is a very classic 3-mark kind of question in an exam, we've kind of helped you out a little bit. There is 5 little bullet points and statements here, which you have to select the correct term while you're copying and completing the sentences. So copy and complete, and you just get rid of the one that's wrong, or you just only include the one that's correct. Okay, so if you think the UK's population is evenly distributed, it's not, but if you think it is, then you would keep evenly. All right, so try and do it, and I'll go through the answers there. If you finish that in the space of about 3 seconds, then what I would ask you to do is then just attempt the challenge tasks. We're going to get some ideas about this in a minute, but try and see what you do know about maybe why the population is unevenly distributed in the UK and what factors affect that distribution. Why might they not all start flocking to the northern Scottish Highlands, for example? Okay, so pause the screen while you're completing that. When you're ready, unpause it, and I will go through the answers. Okay, so the answers are the UK's population is unevenly distributed. You can see that's why it's not all the same colour. There are different blobs of darker colour. With 82% living in urban areas. We are already a more urbanised country because we did our urbanising back in the Industrial Revolution days. 1 in 4 of those live in Manchester or London or the southeast to southwest. Okay, so 1 in 4 of people live in London. Actually, it's not quite that, but it's close. And the southeast. Okay, Manchester, still a big population centre. The southwest, not so much. You can see here, there's very sparse. So London and the southeast. Many highland regions of Scotland are very sparsely populated. These remote areas tend to have favourable or harsh climatic conditions. It's harsh. The conditions are pretty harsh because they're mountainous, they're cold, they're wet, they're not so nice. Okay, so the UK's population is unevenly distributed, 82% in urban areas, 1 in 4 live in London and the southeast. Many highland regions of Scotland are sparsely populated, and the remote areas tend to have harsh climate conditions. Okay, so these challenge tasks we're going to start looking at very, very soon. In fact, now. So well done for doing that, and we'll move on to the next activity. So why is it that some parts of the UK are more densely populated, and why are some more sparsely populated? Why is it uneven? Why are we not all spread out nice and straightforward? Everyone's got lots of space. Well, there are 4 categories for the reasons why, and they fall into these 4 main reasons. Either a physical factor. So it's worthwhile knowing what these physical factors are. Maybe I'd write these bullet points down if I were you. So the physical factors that affect where people are found are the things that are naturally occurring, landscape factors. So is it mountainous? Is it boggy? Is it cold? Okay. Do many crops grow there, for example? So they're the physical factors. The historical factors, or historic factors, are referring to industry from the past. So what places originally developed large industries? Again, think to the Industrial Revolution here. Economic factors, and they're recent economic factors. So what things have happened more recently in what we call the tertiary and quaternary industries. They're like high-skilled, high-tech industries. Where have those industries developed over time? And the last sort of factors are what we call political factors. So where is the government centre? Where's the most important place in terms of decision making? Where attracts the most investment from people from other countries to set up their companies? So they are the four main factors for the different variations in UK's urbanisation rate, and that's the reason why Sheringham in North Norfolk isn't particularly densely populated, because it doesn't really tick many of the boxes for developing large population centres. So your task to help you understand these four factors is to sort this information into one of those four factors. Okay, so this is on 365, and what I'd like you to do is come up with a color-coded key where you identify whether the factor is a physical factor, an historic factor, a recent economic factor, or a political factor. Okay, you can use whatever colors you want, but what I'd like you to do is just like a little blob or shade it, whatever you want to do, print out your thing. Even if you save it and do it electronically, that's fine, but where you've got a key clearly saying which one's which. Okay, so do that. Read back through the definitions, okay, over here if you're unsure. That's why I asked you to write them down. And then have a go at trying to sort these into what you think they are. So one example, just to get you started, the UK can be roughly divided into two by the T's X line, with the northwest being more mountainous and the southeast being flatter. Okay, this is about mountains or flat areas of land. That is a physical factor. All right, so that one's physical. So do that, pause the screen. When you're ready, unpause, and I will give you the answers. Okay, so let's see how you got on. The physical factors, I already pointed out one of them. The second one, steeper slopes on higher land means soils are thin, farming and building are difficult. That's why more people don't go there. And rich soils in East Anglia mean that farming is common, but because this requires the space, the amount of urban areas is limited. Good old Norfolk, yeah, it's got great land for growing stuff, but you don't want to take up all that great growing land with buildings. It'd be a bit of a waste of space. The historic factors, there you go, you've got quite a few there. In 1801, only 17% of the 10 million population, blah, blah, blah. Okay, you can read it through. Okay, you've got the sheet in front of you, but these are the historic factors. Recent economic factors, there's only a couple of those there. So recent, I know I'm using recent in a strange way, but since the 1950s to today, so that makes it more recent, talks about developments in transport, education, healthcare, finance, high-tech industries. And also modern industries have grown in places like Swindon, Basildon, Basingstoke. And then lastly, your political factors are that effectively it only really is talking about London. London is where our government is, it's where most of the main decisions are, and lots of businesses locate close by. There's lots of investment in London as a city. In fact, it's quite controversial just how much investment there is in London as a city. But more on that in another topic another time. Okay, so there you go. There are very specific reasons for why the UK has an uneven distribution. You would need to be prepared to use these, likely in a kind of an explain question. So this would be the sort of development or a way to develop an answer if asked, for example, explain why the UK's population is uneven. In fact, I would be prepared to maybe do a bit of both. You might be given a map and asked to describe where the UK's population is distributed, in which case use your descriptive terms, sparse, dense, east, west, north, south, whatever. And then the follow-up question might be explain reasons for these differences in UK population. Okay, and these are your reasons. All right, so reasons for UK population covered. Let's try and test you a little bit in a more difficult exam scenario. There is a YouTube a video link here, okay, which I'll just have. It's not YouTube. This one's a BBC Learning Zone clip. So if you can find that, great. If you can't, not to worry too much, but I'll have to show you in lessons. But this is an 8-mark question. So I'm loading them on you, okay, as often as I possibly can, because these are the ones where you will set yourself apart from the competition, and the competition is other students in other schools. So assess. So you need a conclusion. You're trying to work out which is significant, the most significant. Assess the factors that have led to uneven urbanisation in the UK. So this is really similar to what I was talking about when it comes to explaining why places like London are very developed and places like maybe the Highlands of Scotland are less evenly, or have less population, okay, are less urbanised. So what I'd like you to do is try and give a couple of factors that have led to uneven urbanisation in the UK, and also then in a conclusion, try and tell me which of those factors you think is the most significant in determining where people are or aren't. Okay, so as a bit of a recap, how you do assess questions: you name or state your factor. So that could be any of the factors from the last task that you've got in front of you in your handout. You describe what that means. So if you've said physical factor or mountainous areas, tell me what you mean by mountainous areas or where they might be. Explain how or why that has led to uneven urbanisation in the UK. So explaining it is important, and try and extend that answer. Okay, so state the factor could be mountains, describe what that means, then explain. So mountains mean that the climate is harsh or the soils are thin. This is bad because, that's an extended answer. Why is it bad that soils are thin? You can't grow many crops, which is not good for people. And then make sure you try and include a specific example, so the Highlands of Scotland or the northwest of the UK. Then try and repeat that for another paragraph. So build that paragraph up. Once you've done a second paragraph, save one for a conclusion. So which of the 2 factors that you mentioned do you think is the most significant when it comes to deciding where places are urbanising and where they're not urbanising? All right, that's not easy. That's something which is just based on what you think, your opinion, but try and justify it. If you are a very, very fast writer and you're able to kind of in 10 minutes get a third paragraph in because you've nailed this structure really well, then please feel free to do 3 paragraphs and a conclusion, but you must never miss out the conclusion. The conclusion is important because the examiners are looking for an idea about which is the most significant. If you don't put the conclusion, you haven't really assessed. You've only just kind of named some factors. All right. So pause the screen, have a go at that. Use the information from the last activity, so your little table with all the details on it, and try and build an 8-mark answer for good practice. Okay. Pause the screen, crack on with that, and then I'll finish up the lesson. Okay, so hopefully your 8-mark answer was pretty good. And if you want to send me, and you've written an 8-mark answer, if you want to send me in one in the hand-in area or an email, because then I'll get it directly for some feedback, please feel free to do so. Just to finish off the lesson, we've talked about the UK's kind of past and present urbanisation and how it's been changing and adjusting. What we're going to look at now, just a very brief sort of thing to mention, is why or how it might change in the future. So what we've got here are 2 graphs which illustrate a couple of things. This is the UK's population, and you can see that it is projected to continue to increase past the 70 million mark, up to about 73, 72 million by 2040. So it's clearly meant to be going up. You can see it's slightly slowing down, but it's still going up. And you've also got another stat which might help you explain what's going on. Fertility rates. So you can see UK-born women fertility rates are low. That means there's, for every UK woman, the average is that roughly 1.7 children were born per UK woman, and that peaked to still just below 2, and it's kind of dropping. And non-UK born women, or migrants, initially they would have just about 2.5 children per household, whereas that has now started to decline quite a lot, but it's still higher than UK born women. So how might these factors affect our population in future? Well, a number of ways. So mentioning migration. Migration is something which goes up and down from year to year depending on certain conditions. So in the UK from 2009 to 2014, the UK actually increased by 243,000 people. per year in each of those years. So that would obviously increase population density because those people aren't moving to the wilds of Norfolk or rural Wales. They are moving to the towns and cities. So urbanisation will still increase, but slowly in the towns and cities because of migration, people moving into the area from either rural areas, but more likely in the UK, it's currently kind of from international migration. And another thing that could affect us in the future is actually the opposite happening, counter-urbanisation. People like me, fuddy-duddies like me, don't really like necessarily going out and partying anymore in the city, and I want to bring my daughter up in a rural environment where I feel it's a bit healthier, a bit safer, a bit more space. So that's something I've done which is called counter-urbanisation. People move away from urban areas to rural areas, and something that COVID has actually done is increase the rate of this because people are now working from home. And they're able to do that because they've got lots of technology and they've got internet access. So communications and technology are meaning that counter-urbanisation means that actually the population might be spreading out a little bit more than it was. So urbanisation might actually be sort of either on the decline or certainly slowing down in the UK to even slower levels than it currently is. Now, if you want to finish with asking yourself a question, what will the impact of counter-urbanisation be on the distribution of the UK's population? I've kind of just told you that, really. Do I think long-term it will be that way forever? Probably not. But that said, there's only so much urbanisation that we can do because the UK is currently well over 80% urbanised already. Okay, so there you go. You have now covered the UK's urbanisation, including where the UK's population are spread, why they're spread there, and you've also even managed to attempt an 8-mark assess practice question. So you've covered lots in today's session. Well done for listening, and we'll see you next time. Thank you very much.